All right, YouTube, let's get it poppin'. Do you hear that music? You know what it means. I do feel a little bit crazy right now because as I do this live stream, baseball season ended literally yesterday. 162 games in the books. Unfortunately, only 162 for the Oakland A's. That was a Sunday. Here I am on a Monday, getting ready with the San Jose Sharks. A lot of people have been asking, by the way, are the games still on NBC Sports California? You've heard a lot of change and transition around the NHL with TV partners, but let me assure you right now, absolutely, the Sharks are on NBC Sports California this season, including opening night. That timed out pretty well, quite honestly. Welcome to the live stream. I know it's going to take a few minutes to get everybody dialed in, joining, all that stuff. I am going to do a Q&A session at the very end of this. But what I have first, I'll be honest, it is like a PowerPoint presentation. It's a keynote presentation. That's the Apple version of it. But I want to go through all of this as it relates to the Sharks and give you my official 2021-22 season preview for this team. And yes, I know they're playing a preseason game at this moment, probably wrapping up here pretty soon against Anaheim. But I wanted to get this thing in the books. I even, look at that. Flashy graphics and everything. Wanted to get this thing on YouTube so that people could start watching it, getting, background info on the team, kind of resetting where we stand with this group headed into a brand new season. So this is it, my 2021-22 San Jose Sharks preview, and this is going to be an interesting and important season because the last few years, you see where this team has been. 18 into 19, of course, that was the year they shocked the world against Las Vegas in Game 7, and then obviously round 2 and 3 is where the season ended in the Western Final against St. Louis. They went all the way to the Stanley Cup. But 2019 into 20, they played 70 games. It's important to remember this was a normal season for the league, right? Everything, I should say, it was a normal season for the Sharks. I take it back. Normal season for the league in that things were going fine until the pandemic. As for the Sharks, you recall that December of 19 is when they changed head coaches. Pete DeBoer was dismissed of his duties. And Bob Bugner came in, and that was kind of the rest of a transitional season. Definitely a transitional season. And that brings us into last year, 65 games, so many restrictions, so many things about last year that just made it a totally different experience. Now, 49 points in those games. I'm not here to make excuses. I'm not here to point the finger, blame. I mean, it was a really rough campaign, but let's also remember how it started for this team, what it was like for this team, what it was like for pretty much every NHL team. I cannot sit here and tell you that you should put too much stock into everything you saw last year, the way it played out, and also the way things were behind the scenes. But the bigger picture here for the Sharks, looking back at these last few seasons, 101 points in those 82 games of 18-19, 63 points in 70 games, and then 49 points in 56 games last year. I mean, literally the Sharks had about as many points in 82 games as they have in their last 115 or so, 120. You can see where in regular seasons where they've fallen away from their mark. But the most important thing to know is that this team, this franchise, has never missed the playoffs 3 straight seasons. I mean, and this is going all the way back, obviously, to the early 90s, through expansion, through rough patches. This just goes to show you that they are in one of the most pivotal times right now in franchise history in terms of making the playoffs. And I realize that for some people and across really the entire 2010s, that was an expectation. I mean, there were so many opening nights for the Sharks where as soon as the puck got dropped, it meant they were basically in the playoffs. You could bank them for high 90s, low hundreds in the points, probably winning the division, if not being a pretty high seed in the Pacific or in the West. I mean, we look back now, and they had great teams, but I think you realize that it's easy to be taking that for granted at the time when it's happening. But now that we're on the opposite end, yeah, and when I say they haven't made the playoffs each of the last 2 years, yeah, one season ended after 70 games, but they were well out of it. And last year, the abbreviated season and realignment with different divisions and travel was different. You only playing teams in your division. Yes, it was abnormal, very much so. But the bottom line is they were still not one of the better teams. They were not one of the upper half teams in the league to get into the playoffs. So they've never missed these Stanley Cup playoffs 3 years straight. And I think that brings you to the number one goal for this team. Now, despite what you'll hear, despite what players will tell you, despite what the organization ultimately shoots for, we know you shoot for the Stanley Cup every single season. We know that you go after players that way. We know that you market the opportunity that way. That's it. And that should be the ultimate goal. I think about anybody in their individual profession. Let's say you're a broadcaster and your goal is to host the Emmys. Well, that's great. That's the Stanley Cup, I suppose. But before you do that, I mean, there have to be other steps to get you to that ultimate goal. And I'm saying here, you can still shoot for the Stanley Cup. Keep that goal. But your primary thing this season has to be simply getting back to the playoffs. I'm not even saying turn the ship around. I'm not even saying make steps forward this year. I'm saying that the number one goal, it has to be getting to the playoffs. Playoffs or bust. And that's harsh. What do I mean by bust? I don't even know. It's just a phrase. It's a term of speech. But it really has to be that for this hockey club. Just get back to the playoffs. Punch your ticket. See what happens. And honestly, no matter what happens in a playoff situation, if the Sharks are there in late April, early May of 2022, that in itself will have been an accomplishment based on where they've been, some of the things they've been going through. I don't think there's any argument against that. So let's get into some of the biggest themes for this team in this upcoming season. And looking back across the last several years, pretty easy to see that whether it was team defense or whether it was goaltending alone, or honestly, it was probably the combination of both, across the last 3 years, this is the area where the team has depleted most. And we can talk about scoring, and we'll talk about the power play definitely here in just a second. But defense is the one thing, unlike offense and unlike scoring, defense should not slump. It's fine if your offense slumps. Every team has it. Every team gets snake bit. Every team has a couple players that go through it. Every team has games and periods where they just cannot find the back of the net. And the chances are there, the power plays are there, and they just can't do it. But defense should not slump. Now, they have a fresh slate in the crease. I was scared to hear about Adin Hill the other day, had to come off the ice during practice. Apparently got hit with a puck in the wrist. And apparently things are going to be fine, still on target. I would estimate he's probably the guy for opening night. And I'm not saying that James Reimer makes this an easy conversation or decision. It's great to have the veteran presence of James Reimer back in San Jose. We only knew him for a brief period of time in 26, right before the trade deadline. He was the backup for Martin Jones. He was kind of the safety net, the parachute, if you will. Wasn't needed all the way to the Stanley Cup final. But it was a great security to have him kind of around and if need be. By the way, James Reimer, I didn't know this. Kind of like me, a total aviation geek. Apparently during the bubble playoffs of 2020, he took a flight sim like control wheel, like a control yoke for an airplane. He took that with him into the bubble so that he could play flight sim. We got to talk about this. We got to do something with James Reimer on that. Anyway, back to hockey. I digress. To have those two alone, I like the idea of a fresh slate. Best of luck to Devin Dubnyk. I mean, even going back now to Aaron Dell and obviously to Martin Jones in Philadelphia. I think all three of them are capable absolutely in what they do next. But sometimes the team just needs fresh blood and a new look. Because this combination, and I firmly believe, if you go back to 18-19 and kind of the start of this into 19-20, the start of this was team defense not making goalies look good. It's my last point here. Odd man rushes and net front chances and situations where the goalies were hung out to dry. It's one thing to ask your goalie to make 5 incredible stops a night. Hopefully they make at least 4. But when you're asking them to make 7 to 9 to double-digit amazing saves because, well, the other team got a great scoring chance or, you had a turnover that instantly came back on you. It's a 3-on-1, 2-on-none. Like, what do you expect to happen? But I'll be honest, I really feel like last season, the transition of problems went from team defense, which kind of still existed, and it bled into the goaltending. And all of a sudden, Dubnyk started strong, maybe didn't finish in the same respect, and Martin Jones just, honestly, it just really got away. It completely got away from him in a short season. And so, like I said, I'm glad that everybody has moved on. I'm glad for that. And one last thing, when I'm talking here about team defense, important to remember that we're not just talking about the defenseman. This is not just a blue line issue. Team defense literally means the entire team. It means forwards on their assignments. It means being responsible about turnovers, and when they happen, you're prepared to play instantly some defense. I know team defense has the word defense, which is similar to defenseman in it, but I just want to be very clear. What I think we've all seen is a breakdown from the entire team, all the skaters on the ice, and it's that skater-goalie relationship. I'll also throw this in there. It's similar to baseball in that pitchers have an ERA, an earned run average. Well, that's nice because it doesn't factor in if your shortstop makes an error and 2 or 3 runs score because of it. That does not go on the pitcher's ERA. But for a goalie, the save percentage and the goals against, they are reflective only if the goalie stopped the puck or how many got behind them in a given 60 minutes. And so the issue kind of here is that it doesn't tell you the full story of, well, yeah, they got beat, but like 3 players in front of them who should have been the first, second, and third lines of defense, they also got beat too. I'm not saying it's misleading for goalies, and I know there are other, team stats, but what everybody looks at for the goalies are save percentage and goals against. Those are individual stats, but they are composed in a team effort. And so 2 or fewer, right? Like we got to get back to a little 2 or fewer conversation here. That happens way not often enough. It's not 2 or less. Come on, we found that out a couple years ago. 2 or fewer. When the Sharks allow 2 or fewer goals, they pretty much win. 77 out of 78 times in a row, something like that. This to me is the main recipe. Like I said, we can talk power play in a second. We can talk about team chemistry. We can talk about veteran depth and presence and a third and fourth line, all of that stuff. Absolutely. But it's got to start with defense, and in tandem with that, goaltending has to be equally up to par. Okay, let's move on here. The power play. Will it have a new look? And when we say that, how different are we talking here? Because last season, they converted to the tune of 14.1%. That was 29th out of 31 NHL teams. By the way, how weird is it to say this year 32? I'm going to have to keep remembering the Kraken. But 32 is a nice even number. Anyway, why am I talking about this? 29th out of 31 teams last year, 14.1%. Obviously not going to cut it. And you know the old hockey math, right? You want to take your penalty kill percentage and your power play percentage, and if you add those two up, you're coming in at around 100%. Well, to do this, your PK needs to be 86%. And, that's very difficult. So the bottom line here is that 14.1%, not good enough. And it's not even the measure of converting on power plays for the Sharks. Wait, how could I say that? That's everything, right? The results in this are everything. And that is true. But there have been so many instances we've seen in the last season alone where the Sharks get on the man advantage and they only generate a shot or no shots. I mean, it happened way too many times last year, and Randy Hahn would mention it. No shots on that power play for the Sharks. No shots on goal. That has to initially be the one thing that changes. Before you start talking about up in that percentage and trying to get it more like 18, 19, up into the 20% range, you got to start figuring out how every single time you're out there that you make the other team pay for their penalty that they took. Create momentum in those 2 minutes, and also create momentum in the 2 minutes following your power play. You hear that saying, so often. It was a power play influenced goal, because 10 seconds after they got their skater back out on the ice, they were still pooped. They didn't have time to make a change, and you scored on that very next or same shift. So that's the biggest thing for this team is yes, the end result, but getting away from no shots on the power play. I think there were even games last year where they had no shots for 2.5 power plays, like in a game in a row. They went on a sequence of basically 5 minutes on power plays and not getting any shots. So John McLean is in charge. Again, it was an interesting situation for him to join the team, and it was kind of last minute with an opening that happened due to health situations, let's call it. But I think a new set of eyes, new ideas, new implementation. And the bottom point here is what he talked about in his introductory press conference. And I have, Burns and Carlson numbered there, and whether they're together on a power play unit, whether they're separate on a 1 and 2 unit, do you go with a strong power play unit? Do you try and have that PP1 always be it for you, or do you try and make them equally stacked so you can start 2 and then go 1, or you can have different looks? Do you want Burns and Carlson on the points on your power play? How do you do it? That's all remaining to be seen in the regular season. But I think there's going to be a lot of eyes on this. I also think, too, McLean's point about taking over the power play on this team, and that is one of his responsibilities, is that there is plenty of talent with this group to get a way different result than 14.1%. Now, I'm not throwing anybody else in past seasons under the bus. That's not it. But like I said, let's be honest. You would think that the group and the roster that's there is well capable of a higher number than 14.1%. So on the total list of things, where does this stack of importance? It's probably top 3. There's no lie. Team defense and goaltending for me is number 1. This is probably 2 or 3. I really think the other thing that's just simply in the mix is team chemistry. And we'll get to more of that in just a second. But this is probably top 3 for me this season. Okay. This is obviously one of the biggest headlines surrounding this team and going into training camp. I think this is also going to be a headline going into the regular season. I don't expect anything to change. And I want to preface everything I'm about to say here by telling you that I'm probably not going to say what you think or as much as you want or as much as certainly other people are talking about this situation, because it's so complicated, it's so difficult, it's also so professional, but it's also so personal. And out of respect to individuals, children, the process, I'm not diving deep into the personal side of this. These are serious allegations, and because of that, these are serious situations. There are multiple different things here going on in sequence, and I think the bottom line is if you're sitting here saying, well, you just want to rush it through, you want to get this done, I think that's probably human nature, and clearly if you're a fan of just this team, of course that would benefit the team. But I think the responsible human thing to realize is that you want these things to take as much time as just they absolutely need to get it right, to get things right, what happened right, solutions right. I don't know how else and how better to say it, because I truly want resolutions for all on so many different fronts here. You know what we're talking about. Clearly, Evander has had the gambling issue, and again, there are personal issues at home. There are issues reportedly, as we've seen plenty of times over the summer, with teammates, with the coaching staff at some point. So again, leaving all of this stuff, I'm only stating the obvious here. It's only easy to want resolutions here in time, but honestly realizing that if this is a team preview that we're talking about here, he was their best player last season. There's no question about that. Had one of his best NHL seasons. Yeah, it was condensed, it was shortened, but if you look at the body of work and you pan that out across 82 games, yeah, it was impressive and it was important. And does this team look a lot different without number 9 out there? Absolutely. I think you could go into filling a gap on the ice. You could go into filling a gap in terms of the salary cap. There's a lot of different things to unpack here. And again, that's about as far as I'm taking this. I really am, because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to predict it. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I certainly have no more information than any of you do. These are legitimate, investigations going on into certain things that have happened. And right now the team, and let me just say this, one more thing. I heard a lot of players rightfully asked about the situation, if they had any comment, how they put this. It's the nature of, being a person, a teammate in this situation. You knew those questions were going to be asked, and nobody really said anything about it. And my thought on that is, again, I understand why those questions are being presented, but I did not expect anything in return. And quite honestly, we got nothing in return from teammates. And that's probably the proper thing to do. Same with me, given the situation, not going too deep into anything, because we don't know. But I do want to go one step deeper on this, because it quite honestly is the only area that I even feel qualified to talk about. And that is, with or without Evander Kane, there's a huge question here of what does the team look like without him? I think we made that point. But what does the team look like with him? Hypothetically, we get beyond this at some point. And that's, even I feel guilty saying that. We get beyond, we get resolutions. If there are resolutions here, and he is part of the team at some point, heck, we're October 4th here, is not even with him. We're a dozen days away from opening night, so who knows how long this goes. But, in order to maybe resolve and bridge some of the gaps that existed between he and teammates, I just want to say this. It's going to take work. I don't think that that's a situation where you just show up and everything's instantly fine and we forget about it and we don't talk about it. Again, this is me not telling you new information. I think this is something everybody can relate to in their personal life. When there is a disagreement, two sides are in conflict, teammates here. How do you resolve it? It just takes work from both sides. It can't just work from one side and the other side flies along, or this side works at it and the other side doesn't care, and it really takes two sides coming together here. So I just want to point that out. Who knows the depths of that and what that would be like if he rejoins the team. But I do want to point out that it does seem like there has to be the next steps of effort on Evander's side and on teammates' side. And if they really want it to work, and I don't mean to pretend here that or imply that that's not possible. I'm just simply stating that it's going to take some work to get there. Okay. More of a veteran presence, I think, is definitely a theme for this team. It's something they've absolutely needed each of the last 2 years. And you could pick and choose different spots here. Sometimes I do feel like their blue line in the last 2 seasons of no playoffs, I feel like they've been fairly established. There have been times with injuries and respective this and that. Maybe they're a defenseman, like a real solid defenseman shy of having a nice, six-man core. But I feel like the forwards are the areas where San Jose has been a little bit shorthanded in the last 2 seasons. And on the third line, on the fourth line, and what you're looking for this team with a veteran presence and with additions like Cogliano and Bonino is consistent efforts, known commodities. It's right there on your screen. You want to know on a nightly basis what you're going to get from, a Bonino at third line center and a Cogliano in those roles, or quite honestly, any other player that you bring up and put in these situations. The same would hold true for William Eklund. Oh, and we'll talk about him in just a second too. But this is an area that has not been this way for the Sharks the last 2 years because there have been so many Barracuda players on this team getting great opportunities, getting great looks. But I don't, honestly, with the exception of Knyzhov and John Leonard, Barabanov, and I've named a few, don't get me wrong, but there haven't been many players who have come up, made a first splash, made a first impression, hatched. The NHL is a lot like every other sport in that it's hard to break in. It's hard. But it is way harder to stay doing what you're doing, keep that role, win that role, and stay there. And that's something I think we've witnessed with Shark players in the last handful of years. There just have not been enough that come up, like I said, make the impact, but also persist. And you know that they're not going back. They're not going back to the AHL or anywhere else. And so that has been, and it goes twofold, right? Because the Sharks did see last year as an opportunity to test young players, to give them more opportunities so that a year like this comes around, a normal 82 games, and hey, you've got even more guys who, when they come up, it's not a big a deal anymore. But it's also important to not bring players up too often and too early. They get overexposed, they lose their confidence. I said this before, it's almost like barbecuing something. Like sometimes if you pull the meat off the grill too early, it's not ready. It's got to go back on the grill a little bit. And you wouldn't want to eat it if it's not ready. And kind of the same goes with athletes and the minor leagues versus the ultimate professional league. So they need more known commodities, again, especially up front. I think those 2 additions I talked about are greatly going to improve that. But I also think when you want more of a veteran presence, you really need to rely on your veterans of this team. I'm talking about Logan. I'm talking about Bernsey, Carlson, Vlasic, Hertl, Timo Meier. He's a young man still, but let's call him a veteran at this point. He's been through this song and dance several times over now. He's seen, several rounds of the playoffs. He knows what this is all about. So I don't think it's fair to say, well, you don't want to see less young guys getting chances. In a perfect world, those chances are harder to come by. But at the same respect, they're harder to come by because you pretty much know what you're going to get from the guys who have been around the block a few times. So I want to make that very clear that a bigger veteran presence is going to help this team, but that means you need more from your veterans, and you also need players that either are young and come in and establish like veterans, or maybe you need to go out and acquire more veteran players. That to me has definitely been a theme. And why do I say all this? You just need to know what you're going to get on a regular basis. What kind of output, what kind of results are you going to get from your players? All right. You know what? This is a global story of the San Jose Sharks. Over in Sweden, they are really interested in how this is going to play out. What is going to be the season status of currently 18-year-old, but by the time opening night comes around, 19-year-old William Eklund. Now, just a quick backstory. When he got drafted 7th overall this past summer, there's no doubt the Sharks were surprised that he was still available to be taken. I think he was well off, not off their radar, but well off their expectations. They didn't think they were going to have a chance of drafting Eklund. Turns out he was there, took him in a heartbeat, and they were very happy with that. I know a lot of people, after the draft was over, talked about how big the Sharks won. Is it luck that you were there in that spot? Yeah, the 7th pick. It's not like a top 3 pick, not even a top 5 pick, but they thought the Sharks, in a lot of ways, won this pick and the draft entirely, all the players they took, but especially getting Eklund 7th overall. Now, there's been a lot of talk lately. Can he make the team? And as training camp has started and as preseason games have happened and as people get to see more of him and understand what he's all about, have you watched his interviews, by the way? There are some of them here on my YouTube channel. Phenomenal composure, maturity for an 18-year-old. Are you serious? He's better put together than a lot of 30-year-olds are. Now, he looks young, but put it on, or not put it on mute. Don't look at the screen and just listen to what he says and the way he talks and the way he answers questions. I mean, yes, some of it looks like a teenager, but my goodness, he is well ahead of the curve. That's all off the ice. The fact that he is of the Vlasic / Marleau talent at that age, you know what I'm talking about, he might be able to break into the NHL this opening night in 12 days. This rarely happens in the NHL. You always draft a player to then go to the AHL or some other, team across North America or even in Europe so that they can continue developing, but now they are one of your prospects. This is so rare that he might be drafted a couple months ago. Was it June was the draft? I can't remember. June or July? Sorry, I was in baseball mode. And here we are basically 3 months later, and he's on an opening night roster. I think, from what I understand, what I've heard, observed, have you seen the highlights, by the way? This kid's amazing with the puck. So it's possible. It is great overall. Let's take a step back here. How great is it that even if he doesn't make it, that the Sharks pipeline is like this again? That there's somebody like this coming around sooner than later. The fact that he is in the mix is awesome. It's honestly, it's been a while since there has, and part of it is the Sharks' success. Success gets you low draft picks. Low draft picks doesn't get you a William Eklund earlier on. But herein lies, I'm telling you, a theme of the season. We're going to be watching him no matter where he ends up to start, no matter where he goes next, and if there's a next stop after that. We're going to be watching him way closer than we have a lot of other Sharks prospects over the years because, like they talked about going back to Sweden, playing on the larger ice surface that he was used to, and it's a difficult league. It's a tough league, but he's already been playing there. Do you just want him to get more of that? The other idea would be play in the AHL. Before you do the NHL thing, at least get used to the North American rink, which, by the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about, much smaller. First time I ever saw the international rink, and the Sharks played on it in a preseason game against a German team. This is like 2010. Anyway, long story short, the game is so different because a lot of times the German team would literally always take the outside against the Shark players because the Sharks players were ready to edge them out on the wall, and they realized, the wall's another 10 feet to my left or my right. I was planning to throw a hip check right here, but I can't because he'll just get right around me. So anyway, point being that the game, it just plays a lot different, especially for a winger when the rink is a lot more narrow in the NHL. So, but is that part of it? Is he just that close and not ready? Do you not want to put a ton of pressure on him? Do you want to start him with the Barracuda? How does this go? The same lies true for any other young player. If you bring him up too fast, what do you risk? Is there a risk in that? Do you have a game plan? Are we going to say, hey, 10 games, 20 games, whatever, let's see how it goes. We'll make a decision there. And that's fine too. All I'm saying is that we will watch his every move and his every placement this year. And we might overthink it. I'm not going to lie. We'll be considering, is this the best path? What does this lead to next? And optimally, maybe he just starts up with the Sharks. Maybe he latches. Maybe, He's on a line that works, and that's it. And that's the end of the story. But the point is here, the last thing is the Sharks just have to get this right. You know, like a 7th overall pick that could have been a top 3 pick that they got their hands on, and they're trying to build for, now moving forward. He's obviously a huge part of that. You got to get this right. What is that? What does right mean? I don't know. That's for smart people like Doug Wilson to figure out. And honestly, Bob Bugner talked about it too. What roles, who's going to make the team? Like, the players will decide this, right? How they look, how they perform under a little bit of pressure. But I think the Sharks have to help the situation out, help William Eklund get it right. All right, what's next? Schedule oddities. That's definitely a big theme early on of this season, because you have a trio of 5-game road trips, I think between October, early and late November. I mean, literally before December, you've already been on, huge 5-game roadies. Those are usually like 1 a season, maybe 2, and stretched out over months, but 3 of them really early on here. And there's also this oddity. The Sharks are playing, some Western teams, a lot of Eastern teams. A couple of those early 5-game trips are out East, but the Sharks will only play 2 Pacific Division opponents by December 9th. And actually, I take that back. It's Calgary in both of those games, one in late November and one there on December 9th. So how does that work? On December 9th, the Sharks will have played Calgary twice, and they will still have yet to face any other Pacific Division opponent. I don't know what that means. I'm not going to try and overanalyze that. I know by the end of 82 games, it all plays out the same anyway. Kind of, because there are some differences in this year's schedule too. But it's odd at first. You're going to see Sharks and Jets a couple times, Sharks and Montreal a couple times. I think the Sharks play the Islanders like well before December 1st twice, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, the schedule does get quite busy in November and in the month of April. Now, this is still a condensed NHL schedule. Usually opening night would be like tomorrow or the next night, the 4th or 5th or 6th, early October, first week usually of October. This year, for whatever reason, and maybe it has a little bit to do with how late last year finished, but this year it's October 16th for the Sharks. And the season goes all the way until late April, and part of that is because of what the Sharks will have is a 3-week Olympic break, first 3 weeks of the month of February. So that's when the NHL is going to shut down entirely. I'm excited to see that. I'm happy that, the owners have got it together. If from what it sounds like, everything's going to work just fine. It is a large risk. I mean, you're the primary employer of these star players that are all going to be going to Asia and participating in the Olympics. And, hopefully COVID has subsided significantly, so that's much less of a concern by February, I hope. But obviously the other injuries, which have always been a question mark and a concern for owners, do you really want to have them playing these games? Not necessarily on your dime, but at your risk. But that being said, me as a spectator, I like the players too. I want what the players want, and they want this opportunity, and they didn't get to go in 2014. So, I definitely want that for them. No, did I say 14? Did I mean 2018? But it's going to be a busy schedule in November, playing pretty much every other night. I mean, that kind of goes back to what the Sharks experienced last season. And we talked about COVID and protocols and not playing their first home game for a month in, thinking they were going to have to start home games in Arizona. All that was bizarre. But another part that nobody really talks about was the workload of games. When you're playing every other night, you are not really getting an opportunity to have practice days in between, rest or proper recuperation. An NHL schedule, yeah, they can play even back-to-back nights. That's fine. But they got to get 2 nights off somewhere else, totally reset, get a practice day in there. So November and April are the busy months. If you just glance at the calendar, you can see they're dotted up pretty much once every other night. So it's a busy stretch in the second month and the final month of the season for the Sharks. And then the other biggest theme here is, quite honestly, the rest of this Pacific Division, which we didn't see, entirely last year. And now this year, it gets a little bit different, that the Desert Dogs, I would play the sound effect, but it would stop my presentation here. The Desert Dogs are out, right, with 32 teams because the Kraken are coming in the division. So I've divided this into groups. The SoCal teams, the Western Canadian teams, and I'm still calling the Las Vegas Golden Knights, not the Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Golden Knights expansion-ish, right? But Las Vegas and Seattle, and what are the Kraken going to be like? If it's Golden Knights 2.0, this division is in trouble. That's unfair, by the way. If the Kraken turn out to be like the Golden Knights, how is the league? I don't think they're going to expand beyond 32 anytime soon. That's already a lot. So they won't have to deal with this, but these teams are going to sit, for the next 5 years and say, look what we've had to deal with. The Edmontons, the Calgarys, the Vancouvers, Kings, Sharks, and Ducks. It's frustrating enough to have the Golden Knights handpick, cherry pick. But I'll say this, if you think right now, well, the Kraken don't appear to be the same team. You sure about that? Because were you saying that the Golden Knights were going to be really good this time, 5 years ago? Were you saying that? No, nobody was. Until their season started, they didn't lose a bunch, and they went all the way to the Stanley Cup final in year one. Yikes. Now, if the Kraken do that, well, I don't want to say what I'll do. Anyway, how stacked is the rest of this division? You know what? The Kings and Ducks have been working really hard on their pipelines. Vancouver, just every time they seem to turn a corner, they also seem to take a step back. And realistically, with who Edmonton has on the team and what Calgary should be on a regular basis, I've always thought that those three teams were underperforming, but therein lies the problem. It's only a matter of time before they get a season right, or two of three of those teams, or all three of those teams get a season right. And then you've already got Las Vegas in there. And how soon are the Kings and Ducks, the trio of California powerhouse that it used to be? Think about what this division used to look like. If you'd come in from out east, you would get hammered by the Kings, Ducks, and Sharks. They used to call it the California Gauntlet. Did I say that right? Gauntlet. Gauntlet. Why did I say that word? Now I got problems with it. Gauntlet. All right. But clearly it's not that same level of difficulty anymore. So the rest of this division, I'm just going to say, probably hasn't been the strongest over the years. I would not expect that to last too much longer. And I believe that concludes. How long did I just talk to myself for? Oh my gosh, like 40 minutes. So there are some people here sitting on the live chat going like, this was called a Q&A. Is the dude going to take any questions or comments? I'm glad people are here. I'm absolutely glad people are here. And I'm going to dive into, I guess I'm just going to try and catch up here. Should I do that? Give me a second to load this bad boy up here. All right. Let's go. I agree with you, B-Sound Beats. How long do you think the Sharks rebuild will be if there is one? I think they're aiming to not have to wholesale change things from top to bottom. Clearly, I think in order to create flexibility, you have to have cap space. They don't have that right now. But I don't think their intention is to go all the way down to zero, or not zero, but entire cap space just to try and fill up the tank all over again, if that makes sense. They're not going to drive the car to empty to just fill it up, to full all over again. So to your point, I don't think and it's been emphasized, it's been said over and over, rebuild is not the most accurate word. So we'll keep an eye on that. Yeah, the Sharks game is on. I know it was being covered on the radio. I saw people, posting some pictures on it. It's got to be over by now, right? 10:15. But I'm glad people were keeping an eye on that. Jack, you're so happy for hockey season. Hi, Jack. Nikhil. Hey, Nikhil, talk to me, not Jack. Bamboo Soldier, good to see you. Oh, getting a little game update here. So this was a while ago. Hurdle scored a goal. And wasn't there some concern he got hit with the puck earlier tonight? Are the Sharks the Maple Leafs of the West? Now, Oscar, I can't believe it that you would even make that reference, because the Toronto Maple Leafs, their playoff lack of success has been astounding. Let me just pull this up here. Hang with me, if you would, here for just a second. Let me see how I could pull this up here on the screen. Sorry, I decided to call this audible because I really think that this is worth doing together as a group activity. Okay, I think that's going to work here. All right, list of Toronto Maple Leaf seasons. Like, I've never even clicked on that before, but here we go. Scroll over this way a little bit. You know what? I want to try and fit it all on one screen here. All right, so let's go down here to... This is really bad formatting. Hang on one second. Let me scoot this over. There we go. That works. So, I mean, look, they're in the playoffs all these years, 70s, 80s. It's a different league. It's a different game, 95, 96, 97. Then all of a sudden, like right after that lockout hits, season canceled back in the day. I mean, check this out. 05, 06 to 7 to 8 to 9 to 10 to 11. Finally in 12, and they lose in the first round to Boston in a Game 7. They lose that. Then they didn't make it for a couple more years. And then they lost in the first round again. And then they got to the end of the first round, lost in a Game 7 in 18. Lost in a Game 7 in 19. And then 19 into 20, you know, there was a qualifying round. It was a totally different playoffs. But they lost to Columbus, for goodness sakes. And then last year, losing to Montreal in a Game 7. I mean, look at these last, I don't want to say 20 years, but at least 15. And even going back before that. Lost in the first round in 6. Lost in the first round in 7. I mean, this pretty much goes at least to the beginning of the 2000s here. Even in 95, lost in the first round, lost in the first round. They just have an extreme issue advancing. So back to the question and back to your point, Oscar, are the Sharks the Maple Leafs of the West? I mean, there have been first round exits for San Jose, but my goodness, not like Toronto. Oh, Samuel, I believe Samuel is at the game. And he is so damn turned. I know what that means now, by the way. Tie game. So that's good, right? You turned? It's good, yeah. Sharks must have been down. Clips Design, say Brody, appreciate that. Big fan. Wondering if I have any positive news surrounding Evander. Is rooting for his return, but hard to find any positive trend in that direction. And you know what? I'm sure you typed this chat before I did a whole section on this. Really tried to break this difficult situation down as best as possible. It's definitely not easy, and I'm really just trying to be as careful as I can about it, because I don't want to come across in any wrong ways with this. I also don't want to lead people in any wrong directions in this. It's so out of my realm, it's not even funny. Should the Sharks let Eklund play in the NHL this year? Because right now he's got 5 apples in 4 games. And will I be back on Pregame Live, or will it be Laura Britt? Brian. So we talked about Eklund earlier, right? I mean, you just got to get it right. No matter what the Sharks do, they got to get it right. And will I be back on Pregame Live? Yes, I will. Now, there will be an early season sequence where it's already planned. I'm going to miss a couple games, but don't worry, just a couple. I had a long summer of baseball, and before that I had going back to January, the last hockey season, I've been on quite a tear. So, yes, but I don't know how many games we're doing, probably in the 70s. I'll probably do 70 out of 73 if that's what it turns out to be. Hang on. Oh, dropped something. Hang on a second. Check my text message. All right. We're good. You're divided. You want to watch, but you also want to listen live. Yeah, I know. I probably shouldn't have done a live stream. Shouldn't have done a live stream during a preseason game at all. Oh, Avocado Flight, thank you so much. Yes, I did recently start a second YouTube channel. I probably should put links to it in this, right? Shouldn't I? But it's just called Brody Brazil Aviation. If you like flying stuff, Brody Brazil Aviation for that. Mr. Grouch86, I will keep it up. Thank you so much. And I'll tell you what I started last year that I'm going to do this year is after games, or I should say after our post-game show on television, I'm going to come live right here on YouTube. I'm going to give you a quick summary, recap, discuss the big topics, kind of, take a little bit more time for conversation, do some Q&A. So all of that's going to come your way this season. I cannot necessarily promise every single game, but I did most of them last year that I covered, and I got a great response out of it. So Jack, fully agree. Defense needs to clean it up. All right, now I can see how far behind I am here in the chat. Jordan, we are actually looking competitive. The one thing I'd say that you don't even need to watch these games to understand is the Sharks are dropping the gloves a little bit more than they have in the last couple of years. Maybe standing up for each other, making a statement. And I'm not one to sit here and totally tell you that, you need to fight to be a good and tough hockey team. Like, you just need to score goals and win. But to know that there are some attitudes, some chips on shoulders, some just pissed off hockey players. Like, I also feel like last year with everything else going on, that you didn't see a ton of emotion from these guys. Don't get me wrong. That's not their fault. That's people can say what they want. I'm here to tell you, knowing at least as many of them as I do, with everything behind the scenes, they were lucky enough just to get a season in and get one done last year. To the point, though, when things are more normal, you want to see after a team loses a game or two or a couple or a game they shouldn't have or a bad period, you really want to see some type of instant response. And so I think to your point, when you say looking competitive, how can you know that from preseason? I'd be foolish to sit here and tell you, look at their preseason record or look at Eklund's preseason stats. It's literally garbage, throwaway stuff. To the coaches, it's not. I mean, they're looking more for repeatability, trends of players, approaches, mindsets. And they could smell that capability. So to the point, though, don't read anything to the results of preseason. But when you say we're actually looking competitive, look at the approach more so than the results. Probably the best way to put it. Mike, hey, how's it going, Mike? I definitely agree with you that the cute factor has been way too high on San Jose's power plays. And as I did this presentation, I talked about how do you set up this group? Do you have really a top established unit and then a second complementary unit? Do you try and split them up 50-50? Do you put 88 and 65 together? I mean, how do you do this? How do you split time? Anyway, long story short, I think an overall theme to your point is just the amount of pass, and how many times on power plays in the last couple of years did they not only gain momentum from being on the man advantage 2 minutes, but how many times did they not even get a single shot on goal? That can't happen regularly. It's going to happen once a month, maybe twice a month, but to have it twice a week, it can't happen. And being cute, is probably a big part of it. Pucks on net, throw rubber at the goalies. You never know what kind of rebound or tip or second chance that you're going to create because of that. I'm also not here to say take bad shots. Like, don't, shoot it right into their catcher. Like, that's ridiculous. But at the same respect, this is a very offensively dynamic team, a creative team. Get those shots and take them and see what happens as a result of it. Wheezing lungs. That doesn't sound good. Brody, do you think the coach gets dealt with? Whoa, like that? If the Sharks don't have a solid record halfway through the season, ever since Pete left, I haven't been too impressed with Bob. It really has been difficult, hasn't it? Bob took over, like we said, in December of 19. They only end up playing 70 games that year. So what were the final 12 games going to do? I don't know. But that season in itself, abnormal. Last year, completely abnormal. So not to totally just, make my point and defend Bob instantly. I think you understand that's the direction I'm going. But the reason is because he hasn't even had a full normal season yet. You have to give him that. You have to see what can happen here. Personnel-wise, I think they're a lot better off right now than they were last year. Goaltending-wise, fresh slate with Reimer, Aiden Hill, Cogliano, Bonino. I mean, there are nice complementary pieces that were made here. And you know what? Doug Wilson talked about that the other day. It reminded him a lot of going into the year they went to the Stanley Cup final and adding a Joel Ward, and was Brendan Dillon maybe a year or two before that. But you kind of understand, like, you're adding players who have played and you know what you're going to get from them, and relying a little bit less on the unknown commodities. So what I'm saying is, I think you'll have a much better evaluation of Bob after this year. I got to say this. Certainly don't know him as well as I've known some other Sharks coaches over the years, but I really like his thought process. I like the way that you can see him thinking and talking through things, even with the media. Because if he is that straightforward and clear and easy to relate with the media, imagine how that works with the players. So that's my thoughts on that. I to the point, I don't think we're talking, coaching change this year. I think it's probably premature. I am back on the Sharks train. Is that Don Cherry? It's smaller on my screen with his stunner shades on, because it just looks like a Don Cherry suit. The photo's not a little dark. Just that's all. Yeah, you know what? Baseball ended yesterday. I wanted to get this video out. I wanted it to exist in the world, make some other clips from it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm taking a break here for a while. I'm not going to do TV for a bit, so I thought I'd make this video. Yeah, I'm thinking NHL is not just for the Sharks. Okay, Dylan. Don't know what you mean by that. Oh, okay. Now I see what you're talking about. All right. Hey, you know what? This for baseball, I'd tell you to kick rocks and get lost. But hockey, especially in California, we still need to grow the game. We need fans. So if you can take your stance with the Kings, and if you can be a real Kings fan, I'm not going to, I'll be kind to you. Oh, Mike, getting controversial here, going after one of my favorite players of all time. Logan Couture didn't seem like he was a right fit for the Sea. Let me say this. Logan has had it far more difficult with everything else that's gone on in the last couple years than Rob Blake had it, than Patty Marleau had it, than Jumbo had it, than Pavs had it. Now, it's not to say that there were huge moments of adversity, like not getting past the conference final for a couple years when Jumbo was captain, and clearly 2019 and Pavelski, the whole, 5-minute major, or even being down in that series to Las Vegas. And anyway, there have been moments of adversity for all the captains, 1,000%. I don't mean to dismiss that. I hope it didn't come across that way. What I'm saying is, those were fires that came and went. Logan literally has a couple things right now between coaching changes and maybe some disagreements inside the dressing room that nobody really wants to get into. And that's right. That's I would keep it in the room too. Absolutely. Why would you choose any other route? But to understand that there are bigger things right now for him than maybe other captains who were before him. And also the fact that this team is not, he's not the general manager. He's not the coach. This team has not performed the same way. That's not all on one player. Even the captain, it's not. What they're capable of, it's just that he's kind of dealing with that too. Probably the best way to say it. So I think, I literally thought from the first season I watched Logan in, was it 2009? 9 into 10. I was like, this kid is a playmaker. He's going to be great in this league. It took a couple years, and I thought probably be captain someday if the opportunity, at that point, Jumbo was the guy. It was hard to fathom anything else. But I clearly thought that he could be in a position like that. And he got into it, but he got into it under some really difficult circumstances to go along with it. And so I'll say it. It's been frustrating. I feel frustrated for him sometimes that it hasn't been as turnkey as a lot of us would like. Oh, avocado flight. Beyond Meat sausages on the grill. Ooh, but the spicy ones. Now you're doing it right. They got bratwurst ones too that are amazing. Yeah. Put some sauerkraut on that. Put some Dijon mustard. Ooh. Now we're talking. We you know what, avocado? We actually got to talk. Maybe we'll do something on the Aviation channel. Sounds good. Jesse, thoughts on Jonathan Dahlen? You know what? I'm going to be honest with you. Jesse, I failed you in this one because I know the name, I know the background, and I know the whole deal. Haven't seen him in person, haven't done enough research on this, but that's what this next week and a half is about for me as I transition. I prepared my PowerPoint, I guess, and you know what? He was kind of in that mix of saying that you need known commodities. If he can prove that he's a known commodity, I saw he was in there playing tonight. I don't know how he did. But I think that's what all the young players, him and everybody else, have to do. So, A's, Raiders, Dubs, Sharks. Hey, busy night for you. Well, I guess were the Warriors playing in Portland, and the Sharks were playing at home, and the Raiders were on Monday Night Football, and unfortunately your A's are not going to play again for a handful of months. Yeah, and that's the thing here, Avocado Flight. I mean, Eklund staying up. The game might have been a little bit different when Pickles was 18. We're not talking, well, I guess it was that many years ago, but you just have to get it right. You know, you don't want a guy up and down and question marks and this and that and in and out. And it doesn't bode well usually. And I know they will. I know they'll have a plan. I hope that he can help that plan, right? If the plan is, hey, we're going to start you in the NHL. We're going to reassess it after 15 games. We'll make a decision after 20 or 10 and 15, whatever it is. That's fine. Or we're going to start you in the AHL. You're going to play the first, 15 games. We'll go from there. That's fine. But I just hope he's able to confirm the decision they make and better and make the decision easier that they're going to have to make. Is it Yari? Yari? Good to see you too. I'm so sorry. And I recognize your name because I think I've seen it before. You know I've got this problem. Name, and my name's not, well, I guess it's easier, but if the name is not easy to me, I get so nervous. I don't want to screw it up. Here's an easy one. Luke. Today was 90% of the lineup for both teams, and he created a lot of offensive chances. Talking about Eklund maybe, or Dahlen, probably Eklund. I think there's a lot of people interested in this storyline. Eklund's not going to end up like, Mirko Mueller. That's and going back a handful of years ago, when Merckx was up, it didn't click, and you kind of knew it, and then I think he went back down for a bit and then came back up, and you don't want to get lost in that no man's land. Eklund will probably get 9 games, then sent down to save a year. I don't know. You know what, Phil? If he's ready and they're ready, then I don't see why they wouldn't. Just keep him up. I know what you're saying. But I don't see them doing that in this situation. Still really thrown off by the later start of the season. Yeah, I keep thinking it's starting already. I do too. Every year, every normal year, I roll right into the end of baseball, rolls me right into hockey. And then hockey overlaps with baseball. Last year, as a lot of you know, I had to exit out of the hockey season and go straight to baseball. Would have been fun to have Seattle in the league last season and develop that rapport through divisional play. Well, you're going to get plenty of it this year. I'm really interested to see who the Kraken are, what they're all about. I agree with you, Marty, too. I wouldn't sleep on the Kings or Ducks either. They are, they are kind of cleaning house a lot more. I think the Ducks more than even the Kings, but they're taking a more aggressive approach and really scraping the barrel before trying to rebuild. So we'll see who gets back faster. Didn't even notice it was a Q&A. Yeah, it's because I did the first 40 minutes on my little PowerPoint presentation. Again, I apologize for that. All it did used to be Murderers Row in California. Those three teams, and you didn't know if it was Kings, Ducks, Sharks, Sharks, Ducks, Kings, Sharks, whatever the combinations are. It was going to be those three top teams at the end in the division standings. Now, quite honestly, they're all at the bottom. So I get it's the ebbs and flows of sports, but it's amazing how fast that happened. Ooh, moonshot prediction for the Sharks or any one player. Callywing, if you're saying moonshot in a sense of something I think they can attain, but it's going to be very, very difficult to do that. Like it'll be a challenge to do that. How about Timo at 35 goals? 30 to 35? I'm just saying, what a huge step up that would be. He's capable of it. Sonic Tonic, thank you. I like the late night chats too. How do I feel about all the new goalies? I did a little section on that earlier on the live stream. I just think it's important to have fresh blood. The Martin Jones time, it was an era. When he came over that summer, and I couldn't believe that he went from the Kings to Boston. I mean, the Kings would never have given him directly to the Sharks. They would never have done that in division. And the Sharks got around that. He went to Boston. Sharks got him from Boston. And now Jonathan Quick's understudy took San Jose to the Stanley Cup final in year one. And he was a large part of that all year long. Had a tremendous start to that year, if you recall, a huge shutout streak. But somewhere over time, it got away from him and wasn't able to replicate it. I don't know what the future holds for him. I think a fresh slate does him and the team equally good. I think he's got a lot more to give than he'd been able to show. But anyway, about James Reimer and Adin Hill, don't know Hill personally, comes on a lot of high merits. People are excited about more even potential than he's even shown. I think Reimer is that known commodity aspect. You know what he's going to do. He feels slightly comfortable, and it's a similar group, but largely and mostly a different group from the last time he was here in 2016, early 2016 for the Cup final run. But I like it. I like the fact that it's two players who've already been in this league. You don't have to bring a prospect up and say, well, we know the roll in the dice thing sometimes works with goalies, especially. You catch lightning in a bottle. Like that's happened. That's happened a lot in the last decade with the NHL. Somebody gets brought up who is highly regarded. They're capable, and man, they set the world on fire. They set the league on fire. But it happens, but that is so rare. I like the fact that they're going the more traditional route with such an important position, an important situation for this team, because team defense and goaltending, they have been the weak points for this group. What would I say would be the biggest hot take for this season? Playoffs or else. Like, it's got to be that. It's got to be getting back to the postseason. It's got to be this. Eklund scores 20 goals. Oh, and Reimer had a .920 save percentage tonight. Or Barabanov outperforms Timo Meier. No, going back to what would I say would be the biggest hot take? Maybe I'll tell you what. Colton, I apologize. I could throw something out here off the cuff, but I think I'm gonna save this for an entirely separate video. I'm gonna do 5 bold predictions for the Sharks. When I'm more studied up and I'm more prepared, I'll probably drop it like a week from tonight or a couple nights before opening night. Fair? Sorry. Oh, Ezra with the question of the night. Most important season preview question. Am I and Brownie back on the broadcast together this season? Ezra, Yes, that is confirmed. Absolutely. There are some other new wrinkles and twists and turns to talk about. I am not at liberty to discuss those. But yes, Brownie and I will be back to Brownie and I shenanigans this year. Smelling salts, shooting pucks at each other. Well, no, pucks being shot at me, cheesy one-liners, bad chirps, a lot of condescending talks toward each other. a lot of unprofessional broadcasting and intermissions pre and post game. Yeah, that'll all happen this year. And I do want to point this out. A lot of people have been asking the question, going back now for several months. They've heard about different TV partnerships changing with the NHL, and that's true. NBCSN is no longer the national TV partner of the NHL. Turner Sports, TNT, and ESPN, as well as ABC, ESPN, Hulu, they've picked up those national rights. But from the regional level, like we do, NBC Sports California is still very much the home of Sharks hockey. And I think ESPN picked up 8 games. So our schedule, I do not believe, has officially come out yet. But the high majority on NBC Sports California with pregame and postgame and intermission stuff and all the people that you're used to. And like I said, some tricks up our sleeves. But I want to make that clear because a lot of people have asked me, and it's not their fault. It's not anybody's fault that they didn't understand what was being discussed. NBC not having the NHL anymore is only on the national level. So just want to clarify that. It's not my favorite thing in the world or my favorite thing to discuss, but I want to make it clear. Our team, like our broadcast team, is going to be covering this team as normal this season. What kind of season do I think Logan Couture will have? He won't have Evander Kane on his wing to at least start the season. And Kane, yeah, he did provide a lot of help and chemistry for Logan. 30 goals, 70 points. I mean, I think it's 30 goals is a nice mark to shoot for. Absolutely. Hard to know, John. Honestly, hard to know. I mean, clearly, Logan and Tomas are your top 2 centermen. So, playing time and who they're going to be flanked by is pretty known, right? Like it's understood, probably the better way to put it. So whether it's Kane, whether it's, is Timo kind of locked in with Hurdle? I didn't even see the lines tonight. I don't know how it'll shake out, John, in terms of line mates, but I think what you bring up is an even bigger and better point, is that, Logan, when surrounded by the right players, and last year the team was so thin, largely, Kane was his biggest benefit. Kane had a great season, and because of that, Logan also benefited. But I don't want to make it all about, who he plays with and what he's capable of. Or honestly, even individual at this point. I just want the team to go to the playoffs. Let's see what else here. Ian, Laura Britt is cool. You get the impression she never flakes when invited to a barbecue and always brings beer. I feel like that's a personal shot. Ian, do we know each other? Have I not shown up for a barbecue and not brought beer? But your assessment, regardless of whether that was a knock or not, your assessment is true. So you're picking up what she's putting down? Am I saying that right? Yeah. You got it. You got it nailed. There's no question about it. Not Mr. Pig. You know what? That's another person that we didn't talk about a lot. Mario or Mario Ferraro, depending on what day it is and how he wants to say it. I'm still so tongue-tied. I get intimidated now every time I have to say his name. I got to pick one, Mario or Mario. Even he won't clarify that for me. He says it different every time. But I, too, am expecting a lot from him in this upcoming season. I think he, in the last 2 years, has been thrown in some fires. And, of course, that is the case when you're a top 4D all of a sudden, right? I mean, he came in to the team and, 5th or 6th guy on the 3rd pair. I don't know, ice time, a lot lower. Next thing you know, you're with Brent Burns, and Burnsy's going to skate close to 25, 27 minutes on a given night. So you're probably going to play that much too. And you're also going to go up against some of the top opponent players. And so I think what you saw last year maybe on several occasions were rough patches and several learning experiences, and the curve was hard for him. Trial by fire, probably the best way to put it. But I too am expecting a lot from Mario. And I got to tell you this, the fact that Bob Boughner and the Sharks have an A on his sweater when that's allowed during the preseason, that tells me even more than his development as a player. Like, that tells me the development as a player is on track, but he's also doing the extra stuff as a leader for this team that almost assures that he's going to get there as a player. He's going to take those steps. That's probably my point. When you say you're expecting a lot, you're expecting improvement, the next level, the next layer from him. And what is that? Quite honestly, it's probably being a little bit more physical, but also even more reliable defensively. I don't think anybody's looking at him and saying, score 15 goals a year, score 20 goals a year. No, that's not it. And I'm also not saying he's Mr. Stay-at-home D-man at all. I think he can play both sides of the ice, but I think there is room for improvement there. Consistency, solidity. I know he's capable of it. The dude's work ethic is great. His personality is awesome. I, too, would love to see 38 be a huge part of this team. I would love to see him with that A on his sweater a lot sooner than later. I agree with that. We see Bennington try to fight one of our goalies this year. That was pretty crazy. That was Dubnyk, right? Last year that he kind of he fake sucker punched somebody. And then Dubnyk saw that when he was going out the door and he was like, no. Goalie to goalie talk here. Is there any chance the Sharks sign Patty sometime this season? I got to tell you, I've been thinking about Patty in the back of my mind these last couple days and really week or two as training camps have started and you haven't heard much from the Marleau camp. I intend to reach out sooner than later here, just kind of see what's going on. And I'm not trying to break stories here. I just want to communicate to you, the fans, because I know you're interested too. And I'd love to interview him at some point. Love to just see how he's doing, what his thoughts are. But before I even get the chance to talk to him, let me say this, because I have what I think is a best case scenario for Patty. And this is unconventional, but I think it makes sense. I want him to play in the second half of this season. And maybe not even for the Sharks. So why am I saying this? I think when you're a veteran player, when you're his age, when you're of his accomplishments and his achievements, you have earned the right in your final year or two to skip training camp, to skip October, November, December, maybe even January, and to join a respective NHL team that you know is going to be contending, that you know is building, that you know is going the right direction, but also it's a two-way street. This team's not going to take you on as a charity case. They're not just going to sign, and he's Patrick Marleau, for goodness sake, but he's, at the tail end of his hockey career. But I think there are suitors out there like that. And as their seasons go along, they look at him and they know for sure. Like looking at Patty, there's a couple things you know. Number one, great teammate. Number two, look at the resume. But number three, he is absolutely going to stay in tip-top shape. He's going to find the right ways to train. He knows what to do. You don't have to worry about him being ready for this season, even if he joins it halfway through. How's he going to do that at NHL speed? Maybe there's some type of, like in baseball, you do a rehab assignment. Maybe there's just some way. I'm not going to say specifics. He can figure that part out. He absolutely can. So I don't even think it's going to be the Sharks, to be perfectly honest with you. And why do I say that? Even if they were one of those contending teams and things were headed in the right direction, I think in San Jose, maybe they have focused on new chapter, new direction. Even for him to be around last year was special. It was sentimental because of breaking Gordy's record. But my point is, I think this could be an option. I certainly hope this could be an option. And I also want to say this is not reserved for everybody. You can't be 34 at the end of your career and doing this. Like, this is for legends only. Like, I'm not mad at any hockey player in his situation who would do something like that. And I think it's possible. So I'll close it out by saying I absolutely hope we have not seen the end of Patty in the NHL. All right, I'm going to do just a couple more. Probably going to get off the live stream here by about 11. Jason, you're still getting into hockey. You don't know a lot of the rules, but you love the Sharks. That's great. You've been to one game in your life, and it was a playoff game. Well, you definitely started the right way. There's no question about that. Any series that I recommend that you go to this year? You know what, Jason, I think in terms of rivalries and excitement, and I think a rivalry game would be best for you, like a division team. Certainly when the Sharks play Las Vegas, the temperature is up a little bit, or the Kings or Ducks. And a large part of that, Jason, is because in hockey, by the third meeting of the year, there's some bad blood that's already been brewing. And in hockey, you see, for example, if you're in the West, you see every team in the league at least twice, once home and once on the road. But in teams in your own division, you've seen them several more times, and there's just more backstory and more buildup there. So I would recommend, and I'm not saying, you got to see a fight. I'm just saying the level of intensity of a game like that. And I would suggest also, if you're just going to pick one, like what would be the optimal game? I guess I could pull up the calendar here and pick it out for you, but I would do something in the month of December around the holidays and see if you can go to a division opponent game. A lot of special stuff going on. So that'd be my recommendation, Jason. And then I would also say, no way in the best possible job we could do on TV, there's no way we could replicate what going to a game is like. I mean, that's just national networks, regional networks. Hockey is very hard to translate. Even with HD, even with giant big screens, it's hard to translate on television. So you're doing the right thing by seeing a game in person first, and then going back to enjoy it and watch it on TV. If you try the other way around, for a lot of people, from what I've heard, it just doesn't work. Once they've seen it on TV, kind of wavers. But once you've seen it in person, speed, physicality, sights, smells. Well, hopefully you won't smell too much with the mask on, but you know what I'm saying. Experience it in person first. Eklund has a point in every preseason game except the split squad. I'm telling you, and I understand it's results for him, but I think it's also what the coaches are seeing in him, which is very good. Steven, you're welcome. No problem. Let me see. Oh, yeah, here. Cam, hopefully Aiden Hill is good to start the season. He was getting x-rays today. I heard he took that shot in the wrist, and that scared me. What was that, 2 days ago? I just saw that on Twitter. Like, oh, no. Because it does sound like that he's lined up for opening night, and I'm also getting the impression things are going to be just fine on that front. I don't know what a future extension looks like for Mario, because I think a lot, and I think it's best for the team, and I think it's also best for him to put that on the back burner through this season, right? Let it play out if you're him, why wouldn't you want to let this year play out, have a really good year? You know what I'm saying? Like, up your value. You do that early on here, and you may not get the same reward. Also, the team may not have as much flexibility from the start of this year, I don't know, till the end of this year. So, a lot of questions on Mario. I love it. How much is he learning from Carlson, Burns, and Vlasic? I think what he's learning, even more than playing with those guys, is playing alongside them and playing alongside them against the league's best. I mean, think about this for a second. A lot of times you get called up, you're not paired and you're not matched up against, Connor McDavid for pretty much all his shifts that night, or as many as you can do. the fact that he's been thrown in the fire, I think that means even more than hypothetically, watching players like that on a regular basis. So that's where I think he gains the most. Definitely, I want to one up you here on this question. Now, this is an aviation question. Not everybody would know. We're talking about a Cessna 172 or a 182. Can I just say, realistically, the 210, specifically the Turbo 210. But if you're just giving me those two, I'd say 182, clearly. And I've got plenty of time in both those airplanes. Let's see here. Oh, look at that. We got the lines from tonight. Dahlin, Logan, and Meyer. So Timo was with Logan tonight. Eklund, Hurdle, Barabanov. You got a lot of Euro going on in that line. I mean, I guess you do on the first line too. I love seeing Bonino, and I love the fact that you're just going to pencil in Nick Bonino. It's a third line center every game. That to me, that is an important position. I know we talk a lot about top six and third line center sets the tone for the rest of that line. It almost instantly, I'm not going to say fixes that line, but it solidifies that line to have a centerman like that. And then Cogliano on the fourth with Gamby, Dylan Gambrell, and Matt Nieto. I'm so far behind on this. Hang on, let me just see how the stream is going here. I'm so far behind on these questions, but I'm gonna try and muscle through them. Stand by here. All right, we're back. Are the Sharks and Vegas, Las Vegas, you don't get to change the name of your city because you're a team. Are the Sharks and Las Vegas even rivals considering San Jose didn't beat Las Vegas once last year? And Hernandez, it's a well-stated point. Over the years, it's been easy to identify who the Sharks' biggest rivals are. And for a lot of, I'll just go back to like late 2000s. Anaheim, right? Them and the Ducks in that, was it 08-09 series? And then shortly after, for the early 2010s, it became the Kings, and then it became Vancouver for a lot of years. So it's kind of changed around who the Sharks' biggest rival has been. You could say even more years back than that, it was Detroit because of obvious history. Now Detroit's not even in the same conference. When Las Vegas came around, and as soon as they went to that first Stanley Cup final, I think they instantly became rivals with San Jose. A couple postseason series later, the one in 2019 in the Game 7. At that, if the Sharks in the last 2 years had maintained their competitiveness in the division and in the standings, of course, that rivalry, to your point, would be equal as it's ever been, greater than it's ever been. But because the Sharks have kind of fallen away from the top, I agree with you. I don't know that we can completely consider Las Vegas to be the number one rival of the Sharks anymore. To be a rivalry, you're absolutely right. It's got to be some of this, some of this and some of this. It can't just be all this way every single time like it was last season. Why did I do that, by the way? You get my point. All right, let's see what else we got going on here. Oh my gosh. I thought about this the other day. Does Patty also sign with the Panthers to join Jumbo in Florida? Now, I said earlier that I was planning on reaching out to Patty just to say hi, see what's going on. I don't need to break news. I don't need to be, knowing every secret in the world. Just check in. But I thought that if I were to do an interview with him, if he would be agreeable to do something on TV or record it here on YouTube or whatever, I already made it up in my mind. If I'm daydreaming here for just a second, and if the opportunity ever came up that Florida was on your list of teams that were suiting or be suitors and reaching out, would you preference that one, or would you put that one higher up because who'd be your teammate, or how would you feel? What would that even be like? You guys back together on the opposite coast and It's been a while. It's been a handful of years now. I think we're in a pipe dream when we say Thornton and Marleau back together again in South Florida. But I don't know. Just think about that for a second. How could I not root for that? I'm glad they're in a different conference. I said before, I just want Patty to be on A team. I'm glad Jumbo latched on. I also think for Patty, he deserves and should reserve the right that if he wants to join the league halfway through this season, finish strong, finish in a cup contender, he should get that opportunity too. Let's see where we are at here in this live chat. Sharks versus the Kraken on December 16th. Now, I don't know what type of rivalry that's going to be instantly. I mean, maybe over time it develops. Maybe there's some stuff that happens in game one, their first ever head-to-head. I don't know, but you kind of get the feeling that, also Seattle's going to have the whole geographical rivalry with Vancouver, proximity, short drive between those two cities. So I don't know. I don't inherently know that the Sharks can instantly adopt the Kraken. I know there's a nautical maritime theme going on for logos and stuff, and similar colors, kind of the bluer, cooler tint. But I don't. That one's going to take a while. Like the reason that the Sharks in Las Vegas hit off the rivalry early was pure success and playoff series, and obviously it didn't. It kind of really only lasted a short while. Couple years, and that was it. Mark, do I listen to any hockey-centric podcasts? Would love to see me and Brownie put one together one of these days. Mark, I'd love to, but Curtis is way too busy, but mostly lazy. He's not a man of doing anything for sport. A lot of this stuff here, YouTube, like I'm just on here right now to, do my thing, reach out to fans, have a little one-on-one, and also build the channel a little bit. There's literally no incentive in this right now. Or not much of it, I should say. No, I would love to do that with Brownie. And do I listen to any? I like 32 Thoughts. I think it's a great podcast. And I like Elliot too. And Merrick's great. I like both those guys together. Sharks need a Luigi, and it'll be complete. Yeah, you got Mario. Who should be the Luigi? We'll find him. Find him one. You know what? That's a great question. John Leonard in the AHL. I don't know. There were some early. There were definitely some early moves, relatively speaking, made in camp, and I don't know. Does that send a message? Does that really narrow things down? That's a great question. I don't want to overstep what the coaches are saying and seeing, but it's definitely, it caught me by surprise. Any chance of doing a YouTube collaboration with Mario, aka the youngest of plugs? You know what? I gotta stop. I'll stop with the Mario thing. I'll just call him the youngest of plugs. What's good, all you donkeys in the hood? Is that what he says on his videos? There's a couple interviews I've done with him on this channel. You could search for those. Keep watching this live stream, by the way. I think it would be a great idea. I want to do it when he has time. I don't want to interrupt anything. And now that the season has started, I've been busy with baseball. He's been busy getting ready for hockey. Maybe in February. If there's some downtime, I like it. What's for breakfast, Dad? What? You lost me on that one. I don't know. I don't know. For me, tomorrow, probably toast and coffee and a smoothie. Oh, okay. Here are the lines tonight. Corrected lines. Dahlin, Couture, Meyer, Eklund, Hurdle, Barabanov, Balsers, Bonino, Peterson, VL, Weatherby, and Raska. Oh, yeah, that's right. I did see. Yeah, you know what? Now that it's funny. Until you mentioned that, now I see those correct lines. How am I and Tommy Wingles doing? You know what's funny? I reached out to him at some point last year. It was a while. And I was like, hey, what's going on? What are you up to? I'd love to talk to you. We were doing a lot of Zoom things for the TV network, and I thought people would like to see him. And he was like, you know what? I'm really busy. I'm about to do something brand new, and I'll let you know when it happens. And I didn't hear much from him, and I think he did get into something else. I haven't talked to him in a while. I know he's a dad too, but what a great guy. Great individual. So thank you, Matthew, for reminding me that I have to catch up with Tommy Wingles. Once hockey starts, I'll start shooting out the texts or handing out the texts like they're Halloween candy. All right, I think here I've caught up with the chat. I think I've caught up with most of the things that have been said here. Let me give it a second or two to see if there's anything else. Anybody else want to jump in here on the live chat? If you do, this is the last opportunity. What time is it? Oh my gosh, 11:05. I got to go in the other room actually and do some editing and stuff before I go to bed. So let me take one more peek. If not, I might also be delayed here. I think what I'm saying is good night. So how about that? Baba Booey to you too. Hey now, I've almost been on here for 9 hours. Matthew, great talking to you too. Chase thinks Mario should get a 4th A. We'll see. We will see who that goes to. Should I, just for hockey's sake, should I do it? I'm doing it. So yeah, don't forget, October 16th, first broadcast of the season. Randy Hahn, Brett Hedican, Brody Brazil, maybe Curtis Brown? Maybe not. I don't know. At least for game 1. I don't know. Do you think we should invite him for game 1? But I am enjoying this week right here. It's been a grind all baseball season long, and now got 11 more days to kind of catch my breath. Make some more YouTube videos, drink a lot of beer and wine, and also mow the lawn. All right. Thanks for watching tonight, everybody. Really appreciate this. Subscribe to the channel, by the way, and I will talk to you next time. See ya.